They're throwing their shiny metal asses at me?
I love you, Bender.
We're really getting back to the classic Futurama feel with the most recent episodes, and I hope this level of quality remains consistent. Although perhaps not the most interesting episode overall, Beauty and the Bug feels like an organic story where everything naturally flows into place. I mainly enjoyed this story for further expanding the pre-established lore revolving around Mars and the extremely wealthy Wong family. And there's a minor focus on Amy herself in particular, which I feel could have been expanded upon, but instead most of the episode revolves around Bender.
Eat.
Beginning this time on the Wong family ranch, the Planet Express crew gather around the bugalo farm, reintroducing Betsy, Amy's beloved bugalo from the 3rd season.
Betsy!
I'm really loving all these references and bits of continuity acknowledging the original run of Futurama, and between Hermes being jump-scared by things entering the scene, and Amy's parents sharing their interest in bug fighting, I like the dynamic that helps to establish the story's direction early on. It's also worth noting that just like the last season, Leo Wong is no longer voiced by Billy West, but it feels less jarring with the character given more dialogue this time around. Just like bullfighting, bug fighting is portrayed as a traditional sporting event with all the expected elements of controversy. This of course surrounds the moral implications and the varying levels of cruelty that you expect to see from teasing animals for fun, and Leo Wong typically steps up in favor of bug fighting, referring to the livestock as brainless insects. And should that really make a difference when a living thing is being exploited for the sake of violence? I really like how this theme is brought into question early on, and its relevance by the end is actually quite surprising. With that said, I got the feeling this was going to be another activism episode that would heavily rely on perhaps sabotaging the event in order to change traditional values in favour of non-violence, especially with Amy looking to be the prime candidate for this role where she declares the sport as cruel, which I'd arguably say from past experiences does sound more like a Leela plot thread. But then again, we've already been there and done that with the DVD movie Into the Wild Green Yonder, and it's good to not rehash things, but I do like how this is acknowledged with a sudden cut to Leela carelessly tucking into some bugalo leg.
How about we let this be your issue?
Keeping things fresh, we look to Bender for this story with a shift in focus away from Amy, and when running with the bugalo, he steals the show with sudden aspirations of wanting to become a matador. And why might this be? Well, it's all for the sake of romancing a fembot he meets during the celebrations, but like any and all romances involving Bender, this is obviously not made to last, where he does eventually trip himself up, some might say multiple times. Guest starring actress Anna Ortiz, she plays the love interest Marquita, who immediately catches Bender's attention, and this scene also includes one of my favourite gags from the episode where Marquita delivers her ludicrously elongated name.
Do you have many more names?
Yes, many. Veronica, Helena,
right,
Hermina, Francesca,
right.
Esperanza.
Okay.
But before he can strike up a proper conversation with her, Bender is forcibly removed from the scene by the rampaging bugalo, and when he recovers, she's nowhere to be found. Giving Bender the opportunity to make it big as a matador, of all the people to offer him the position, we see the return once again of Abner Doubledeal, voiced as always by SpongeBob himself, the delightfully talented Tom Kenny. And it's great to see this character used more often throughout the show, and despite the history between these two, and the not-so-subtle dangers, Bender agrees to participate and become a matador, a bug fighter, and this is just to once again try and get close to Marquita, and learning all of the important steps to bug fighting, he starts with clothing, which is apparently the most important element. With it being all for show after all, I do like how the Decapodian tailor from the fox hunting episode makes a reappearance. And the training montage is also fun, albeit a cliche sequence showing Marquita's girl power over Bender, challenging and beating him, even teasing him with the possibility of a romantic connection, but only if he survives his first bug fight. This is where we circle back to the moral implications surrounding bug fighting and how Amy is opposed to the idea. With everyone joining the Wong family for dinner, she deliberately sabotages the meal by substituting the bugalo with an alternative.
And yet you're eating one right now.
No, I'm not. This is beyond bugalo. What it made from? Pork. I never did like pigs.
This once again brings into question a moral ambiguity about the bugalo species. Amy is extremely close to Betsy, where she treats the bug like a household pet, which her father makes fun of, and this also begs the question whether the bugalo can actually understand emotional interaction, and whether they feel any pain from being exploited during the fighting. And settling this once and for all, the professor conveniently analyzes Betsy's brain, which is non-existent. The bug's head is completely hollow, further adding to the moral ambiguity about whose argument to favor in this scenario. Distracted by the fembot's attention, Bender enters the fighting ring completely unprepared for taking on the bugalo, but in a stroke of luck, Fry's stupidity gives him the upper hand, and using his red jacket, he's able to briefly disable the bug. But it's not long before they're fighting once again. And now, a word from our sponsor. No, of course not, but this was a very fun fourth wall breaking gag in the episode, which I thought was creative for what it was. It's a fun, neat touch, even laying into the fictional version of Hulu in the show, known as Fulu. It's very on the nose, but funny nonetheless. With Bender being a robot full of convenience, he conveniently pulls a sword out of his head, brutally defeating the bugalo, and he's even awarded a trophy of his defeated rival, which starts Bender down the path of guilt. Is being a matador actually cruel, and do the bugalo have some kind of awareness, despite the professor's evidence from earlier? He mulls this over and even asks Marquita for her opinion, but she doesn't really give him anything worthwhile, apart from getting jiggy, as Bender frequently refers to throughout the episode.
Speaking of complex emotions, how are you feeling about the jiggy we earlier discussed getting?
Even though he does get what he wants, his conscience does get the better of him, where he's jump-scared by Amy. And one detail that really made me laugh was Bender saying, "You scared me brickless," and later in the shot you see a brick on the floor where he was standing. He confides in Amy, but still feeling awful, he decides to spend some time with the bugs, only this reveals an extremely unusual truth about them. They can talk, but how is this possible? Searching for answers, Bender tells everybody about his experience, and of course, nobody believes him at first. He attempts to stop Marquita from killing another bug in the arena by disguising himself as one, which doesn't go as planned. But despite his foolish attempt at saving the bugs, apparently this was all for nothing anyway. Coming together collectively, the bugs reveal themselves to possess a hive mind. But in a very strange twist, they actually enjoy bug fighting just as much as everybody else. Evening things out, they confess to enjoying the fight and the opportunity to kill matadors, therefore making things right. The ending really cracked me up, where Bender confesses to sleeping around with other fembots, where the bugs and Marquita join forces to teach him a lesson as the screen fades to black. Like I mentioned before, this episode is nothing incredible, but I did really enjoy the creativity, especially from the many visual gags, and how this story didn't follow typical cliches. And despite there being new writers on the show, I must admit certain obstacles, like topical episodes, are going to struggle to stay relevant, but credit where credit is due. The writers do know their Futurama lore, and I like how they're deliberately enhancing certain aspects of the show. It may be viewed as nostalgia baiting and lazy to heavily reference previous episodes like Where the Bugalo Roam, but I think it adds a lot more charm to this new iteration of the series. Anyway, with all that said, that's going to do it for my breakdown and review discussing Beauty and the Bug. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments. As always, I love hearing your thoughts and opinions. And for more Futurama related content, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?